Hi, you are in the ladies' room with Dr. Donica, the only public ladies' room you can enter anytime without ever waiting online. I'm your host, Dr. Donica Moore. We'll be having real conversations with real women about really intimate issues. They may be embarrassing, sad, or funny, but they will always be interesting and informative. You know, like the best conversations you've had in ladies' rooms with your best friends, or total strangers and a physician. Please join us. Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of In the Ladies' Room with Dr. Donica. Now, I have to first begin this episode by giving a shout out to my very good friend, Harriet Donnelly of E5 Marketing, who not only introduced me to our current guest, but also introduced me to our wonderful guest from episode 45, Kathleen Butler-Smith, who's the founder of Morph Mom. And today's guest, Jeanne Petrucci, has also been a speaker at the recent Morph Mom conference. So clearly we all owe Harriet a big thank you for her various introductions and all the great work she does. And one of these days I'll twist her arm into being on our show as well. Now, Jeanne Petrucci is the founder of a fabulous new company called Living Plate. She develops, delivers, and evaluates nutrition information programming and educational programming that's targeted at changing nutrition-related health behaviors. So I resemble that remark. She incorporates hands-on culinary experiences into evidence-based programming, saying, quote, "It just makes sense to me." Yep. So hopefully we're going to have it make sense to all of us today. Now, as a registered dietitian nutritionist, and we're going to ask her to explain the differences between dietitian and nutritionist, she helps clients map out their own eating plans that make sense for their individual lives, their health history, and their preferences. She says she's determined to deliver the best nutritional care she can, all with a whisk in her hand and a smile on her face. I love that.
Do my best.
Now, Jeanne has a really interesting background and even a more interesting and serendipitous way of how she got to where she is. Now, knowing me and knowing this show, you know it must have involved a personal health challenge of her own. And yes, it did. In her case, it was fibromyalgia, which started after the birth of her second child. I will let her tell the story, but the good news is she went on to have 2 more children after that, as well as to add a second Master's of Science degree as a registered dietitian nutritionist to her previous master's degree from Teachers College, Columbia University. Now, before I tell you more about Jeanne, let me just tell you a little bit about fibromyalgia for those who don't know. Fibromyalgia is one of those elusive diseases that's not only difficult to say, it's difficult to diagnose and even more difficult to treat. But for the thousands of women living with this condition, it's simply difficult to tolerate. Women with fibromyalgia have a diffuse pain syndrome characterized by patterns of muscular tenderness on both sides of the body called trigger points. Sometimes the condition can begin for no apparent reason at all. We call that primary fibromyalgia. In other situations, it arises as a result of chronic sleep deprivation, viral infections, Lyme disease, arthritis, hypothyroidism, or other conditions. That's called secondary fibromyalgia. Women with fibromyalgia also report a host of other symptoms, including tension or migraine headaches, irritable bowel syndrome, PMS, jaw pain, anxiety, depression, sleep disturbances, and even memory disturbances, which are fondly or not so fondly often called fibrofog. Many women also report flare-ups, which can be associated with PMS. They can be associated with the menstrual cycle or associated with various other triggers. Interestingly, traditional pain medicines are not generally effective to treat the pain of fibromyalgia, but new pain medications, specifically FDA approved for fibromyalgia, do exist. And these include Neurontin as well as Lyrica. Antidepressants are also moderately helpful. And it's not because of just treating an associated depression, but because these medicines also can treat the pain of fibromyalgia. So I don't want anybody thinking that their doctor is just dismissing their symptoms and saying it's all in your head, unless, of course, they are. Other treatment mainstays include reassurance, increasing nightly sleep, aerobic exercise. And aerobic exercise doesn't have to mean an hour or 2 of going to the gym. It can mean walking to the mailbox and back. Massage, but most importantly, a healthy diet. And that's what we're going to talk about more today. Anecdotally, some women who've gone through menopause, who also have fibromyalgia, have found that estrogen therapy may be helpful, but that has not yet been proven. Now back to Jeanne. She has numerous professional affiliations and accomplishments. She's a member of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, professional advisory board member for the Cancer Support Community of Central New Jersey,
Impact 100 Garden State member, dietitians in integrative and functional medicine, which is what we're going to focus on, food and culinary professionals dietetic practice group, nutrition entrepreneurs dietetic practice group, and on and on and on and on. But most importantly to our audience, she's been a private cooking instructor for over 20 years and is located in Somerset, New Jersey, or Somerset County, New Jersey, which coincidentally is about 10 minutes from where I live. So my first question is, how do I become your student?
Oh, we're going to get you down here. We're going to get you cooking in the kitchen.
So I want to become your student and your client, and I can report on whatever incredible successes you can have using me as your guinea pig.
Yeah. Well, we welcome you here as always. So thank you for having me today.
My pleasure. So tell us, how did you start Living Plate?
Living Plate actually started quite a long time ago, about 15 years ago. Well before I was a registered dietitian, I was a culinary instructor. I am completely self-taught. I have no professional training in culinary arts, but I've always been very interested in food and cooking. I am the daughter of a fearless entertainer. My mother doesn't cook for 10. My mother cooks for an army like all the time. So I was raised in a kitchen where food was always being prepared, and very fortunate to have another female influence, my mother-in-law, who was an amazing cook. So I was really, these two women kind of came together in this perfect storm of my life to give me both the fearlessness to just attack things in the kitchen, but then also, paying attention to some essential, principles of really healthy eating, healthy cooking, rather. So, I've had my mother-in-law and my mother really being great influences on me to getting busy in the kitchen. And I've always cooked healthful food and have enjoyed feeding my growing family. And people were very interested in that. And so I offered cooking classes to really anybody who would want them. And I volunteered at our local hospital and our cancer center, doctor's offices, really anybody who wanted to hear me speak about food. And then I was always cooking demonstrations and food experience were part of that. Because even before I received my master's in nutrition education, I think I innately understood that most people know what they need to do, right? Like even now, we just gave a really beautiful workshop with the Basking Ridge Library, and asked the audience, I'm a dietitian, what am I going to be asking you to eat more of? Everybody knew the answer, right? More vegetables, more fruit, more whole grains, so blah, blah, blah. Most people know what they need to do. So the big question for me was, why aren't they doing it? Why aren't people doing what we know is best for our bodies?
And when you figure that out, you will have a Nobel Prize waiting for you.
Well, you know what?
That is the big challenge. And as a doctor, and I've told you this, I am really good at telling other people what to do.
Yeah.
Not so much myself.
Yeah.
What I find is very often, and many of my colleagues have said the same thing, very often when a patient gets a diagnosis of diabetes or high blood pressure or even breast cancer, they wind up saying, a year later or 2 years later, that was the best thing that ever happened to me because I changed my diet. I changed my lifestyle. I got rid of toxic relationships in my life. It was this big wake-up call to all of a sudden start doing everything right.
Right.
So my challenge has always been, how do we get people to do that without giving them that diagnosis? Or do we just give them that diagnosis and then a year later say, haha, just kidding?
It's really, so in getting my master's degree, I came to understand the science of behavior change. And a lot of what you talked about is that motivation piece. So is somebody or are groups of people motivated to change their behavior? And that's really important because if you're not motivated, you're not likely to change, right? So sometimes being touched by a chronic disease or receiving a diagnosis is that spark of motivation. Okay, now I have to change. Now I really have to. And for those people, like you mentioned, who said that, this diagnosis changed my life, those were the people whose motivation was sparked, and they were able to kind of hop on the behavior change wagon. And when I say a wagon, you are moving along a track, right? It is a behavior change model. It starts with thinking about change, and there's a lot of people who contemplate change for long periods of time. Some people never act on it, but people think about change at various stages in their lives. And when motivation comes into play, that's when I, as a practitioner, have something to work with, right? Somebody who is past contemplation and like, okay, I'm ready to go. And my job is to translate that motivation into action and have it be sustainable. And I think that is where our colleagues as healthcare professionals really struggle, right? Is that, okay, even if I have a motivated client, what kinds of tools do I have to help them translate what I'm saying into action? Right? So I can have a client come in and I can give them like a great, beautiful handout, a list of foods. You can buy, hundreds of books on fibromyalgia and how to treat it with food, but it's really nothing more than a list on paper. And so my job and my mission is to really educate people. I mean, education is important, knowledge is important, but what are the tools that I can develop and I can deliver to them that will help them change their behavior? And and honestly, when we talk about changing behavior, you have to you have to explore with every client, what are your barriers? So ask the question, okay, so you have high cholesterol and you know the foods that you need to eat to help get that under control. So why haven't you been doing it? And I will tell you, almost always, if it's not the number one reason, it's top 3, I don't cook. I don't know how to cook. I'm not comfortable in the kitchen. I don't have recipes. So a lot of it revolves around food and food preparation. And so that's why I'm kind of in my sweet spot here where, I have many, many years of experience teaching people how to prepare healthy foods in their kitchen, simple foods in their kitchen. And now merging it with the science of behavior change. And it really, when I say it all makes sense to me, it was like I was in my class at Columbia, and I was an adult learner. I'm a second career person, and they called us the front row 5. It was the 5 adult learners. I always had my hand raised, and they're introducing behavior change, and I turn around and I'm looking at my classmates. I'm like, do you guys see this? Like, this is it. This is it. This is what we need to do. We need to focus not on only the knowledge and saying, this is what you have to eat. We need to get busy and help people change their behavior. And it's messy.
Well, what I've noticed, and when I talk about this issue, I often feel a little bit about like a hypocrite, because I feel like I don't practice what I preach, and I'm not really sure why. There's probably a bunch of excuses. I actually just spoke to 4-time Olympian Joetta Clark-Diggs, who was wearing a shirt basically saying like, eliminate excuses. So I have every excuse there is. If you ever need an excuse for anything, come to me, because I'm sure we've heard them all. But what I find, and what I tell people, and I should do this as well, is the number one behavior change that most people need to make with respect to their diet is just eating half as much as they're eating. So I think most people are just eating way too much.
Yeah.
And then the next category of sins or transgressions that I notice in terms of diet are eating certain categories of things that we should just never eat under any circumstances.
Okay.
Now and those would include things like potato chips, which have no redeeming value, or diet soda, which was my big crime against humanity for many years. And I did finally break that habit, thank goodness. Because that also not only has no redeeming nutritional value, but also can be very harmful for many things, including fibromyalgia.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I do suffer from as well. So I want to hear your fibromyalgia story. Yeah. And I want to hear how that influenced a career change and how it kind of changed your path.
It really did. So I had just delivered my second child at the age of 28. So, relatively young by today's standards. And it just came out of nowhere. I mean, I thought I was dying. I spent probably 2 years going from doctor to doctor and, basically being dismissed. I mean, this was in the early 1990s. So it really wasn't treated as a diagnosis. There wasn't a diagnosis for it yet. And just, it was really frustrating. It was really sad. It was upsetting. I had people telling me I had, depression and anxiety. I'm like, well, of course I do now, because nobody's believing what I'm saying,
Right. And because I'm in pain and I'm suffering and I have no energy.
I hurt and I can't sleep, and I'm going to bed at night, and I've got 2 babies who are counting on me to have energy. And I really wanted to, make sure that they had the best quality of life possible, and that it wasn't happening because their mommy was so tired and so sick all the time, and nobody was able to help me. And so I was really just, for the love of my children and my marriage and my family, I really was on this path to understanding what was going on with my body. Because up until that point, my body had been I was very metabolically flexible. That's how I would describe myself. I could pretty much eat and do anything, and I feel great. It's how my body has been pretty much my whole life. But now all of a sudden, I can't. And so was lucky enough to, just be tenacious and not give up on myself, and found a really great practitioner at Robert Wood Johnson Hospital who said, I think you have fibromyalgia. That's what I think. I mean, I had all the telltale signs. I had, all the pretty much every trigger point. And the sleep, I did a sleep study. I wasn't, I was going to bed and I was waking up like I never went to bed. I was going to bed.
So that's called unrefreshing sleep.
Unrefreshing sleep, right. I wasn't
getting
What
other symptoms did you have?
I'm sorry?
What other symptoms?
Pain, fatigue, brain fog. I even had neuropathy-like symptoms. I had tingling. First I thought it was multiple sclerosis because it does mimic the symptoms. But that was ruled out. And so that was it. I mean, it was really just the pain, the fatigue, the sleeplessness. I mean, that wears on you. It eventually led to weight loss and hair loss. I was getting skin lesions. It was just, terrible cascade. So I found this doctor who was great. He's like, first, you need to get proper sleep. Sleep hygiene is super important. You need to do certain types of exercise. Of course, by the time I got to see him, I wasn't doing anything because I was so much pain all the time. So he really stressed the value of certain types of exercises.
And those were?
Gentle exercises. Pilates saved me, really. Just the stretching, the, elongating of that fascia, just really giving your nerves some room and giving your body some fluidity was really important. So Pilates, yoga, meditation, back then it wasn't as widely accepted as it is now. Now I have an app, which is great. I use Headspace, which is awesome, every night before I go to bed. And so that was important, but he said the number one thing you can do is, improve your diet. And I was like, what do you mean improve my diet? I cook my own food. I'm like, I had like my little Italian-American girl sass on. I'm like, what are you talking about? And,
He triggered you.
It really had to take a deep dive into what I was putting into my body and made some significant changes. So there is, with fibromyalgia, there really isn't a magic bullet, as with pretty much any diagnosis or condition. I think that it's collective approach to health. And for me, it was nutrition, changing my environment, which I do want to talk about today, because that's the easiest thing people can do to improve their health, and sleep, and exercise.
What do you mean by changing your environment?
Okay, so when it comes to health behavior change, you have to take a look, and you've been in practice, so you understand, like, the patient does not exist in a vacuum. There are many things that influence a patient's behavior, and environment is a huge piece of that. I think nothing will impact your eating habits more than what you keep in your house. So when I'm talking about, there are different kinds of environments, because there's social environment too, like your tribe, your network of people around you, that's important. But environment, I'm literally speaking about what is in your pantry, what is in your fridge, your freezer, what's on your countertop. These are all really important drivers of healthy eating behaviors. And again, the simplest thing people can do. So even if I have a patient who is just like, I'm paralyzed, I'm so tired, I can't cook. Okay, well, if you have somebody helping you do your food shopping, let's start getting some anti-inflammatory foods, which is really what we're going to be talking about, into your environment, and make sure they're available, and get all the other stuff out, get the diet soda out, get the chips out for now. And it doesn't mean that you can never have a diet soda. I'm not, I don't like to put restrictions on my clients. If that's something that you feel you need to have in your life, great. But let's talk about how it fits, right? Let's talk about how chips fit. For the most part, you really need to maintain an environment that fuels healthy eating behaviors.
Okay.
What do
So
you
that
think about
starts
that?
with cleaning out the pantry, cleaning out the fridge, not buying that stuff.
Yeah.
You mentioned people helping you do your grocery shopping for people who have chronic illnesses or little babies.
Yeah, sure.
I think one of the greatest advances of our time, as somebody who has had mobility issues and challenges, I specialize in orthopedic problems for myself. But now that grocery stores deliver and you could do your grocery shopping online.
Yeah, it's
great. So that eliminates impulse buying, but it also gets the groceries delivered right to the counter.
Exactly.
As opposed to, most people don't think about just the act of grocery shopping for somebody with fibromyalgia or with somebody with a broken leg or a back problem. You have to put the groceries in the cart. Then you have to take them out of the cart and put them on the conveyor belt. Then you put them into the bag. Then you take the bags and you get them into the car. Then you carry it. And
then you're exhausted. And then, you get home and you put it in your fridge. You're like, ugh, I'm done.
It's a lot of lifting and bending.
I agree. And so part of the process of helping people with their behavior change is to say, okay, well, if grocery shopping isn't in your wheelhouse right now, that's okay. Let's, we provide these digital meal plans, which have been transformative in my practice and in the practice for dietitians all across the country, because we share what we do. I should just mention that what I do here at Living Plate, I do as a nonprofit. I'm a nonprofit.
Oh, wow.
So when I talk about developing these tools, I'm developing these tools to share them and to scale them and to make sure they work here, and then we roll them out. And these digital meal plans have been transformative because it allows patients and clients to see what we've been talking about. So here are the list of foods in the context of recipes. So literally, what am I going to be eating throughout the day? And then it generates a grocery list, and you can go on to, Amazon, or you can call to, Shop from Home for ShopRite. And I'm not plugging any one brand here, but those are the ones that most of my clients use. Or if you can have a friend go to the local health food store to fulfill your grocery list, just getting them into the house is step one. And then step two is...
I think we decided step one was getting the bad stuff out.
Getting the bad stuff out. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So cleansing, and
I have this image of Jillian Michaels coming into my kitchen and just taking everything out of the pantry and screaming at the same time.
I don't know that it has to happen that way. I mean, for some people, it's more of a process than like this, I'm going to get it all done, because that's kind of overwhelming too, right? Yeah. So you can do a pantry cleanse, but the pantry cleanse will happen naturally as you start bringing things into the house, and you're literally pushing the other things out, right? So I'm bringing in the healthy foods. I'm making less space for the, I wouldn't even call them unhealthy, but the occasional food indulgences, and really just filling my space with healthier foods. And then, working with a dietitian who is be able to give you a plan to say, okay, if you're going to have a snack, this is what it should look like, right? Maybe you should have an apple with some nut butter, or maybe you should have some grapes with cashews instead of grabbing, going right for the carbs when you're hungry. So really just, cleansing the environment, getting fresh things in, making sure that you have assistance in getting these things into your home. And then step two is start thinking about, okay, how am I going to feed myself with this food? And I should just take a step back 1 second. It's not always about the groceries. We also partner with meal kit delivery services. There's some really good quality ones out there, as well as meal delivery services. So I work a lot with oncology patients, and many times they just can't cook. And they just, and I think that could also be true of the fibromyalgia population. Like, I'm just so tired, I can't cook. The smells are making me sick. I just can't deal with it. Sometimes you just want food delivered. So we're trying to provide a sustainable solution for our patients, just like trying to think of everything and really making it work within the context of this digital meal plan for them.
That's awesome. So with fibromyalgia in particular, or other inflammatory conditions, what are some of the specific foods that are either helpful or hurtful? I know I read a book years ago, I think it was called Uncle John's Big Book of Food is Medicine. And
Okay.
it was a silly title, but it was a fabulous book. And it really did open up my eyes to the medicinal value of food.
Yeah.
And then the other books that I've read that I know a lot of my listeners have read is the whole Outlander series. Did you read that?
No, I have not.
Oh,
Great.
it's awesome.
Okay.
But one of the things that really appeal, I mean, it's kind of silly premise. You have to kind of suspend belief. This woman goes back in time to
Okay.
sort of colonial times.
Right.
She was a trauma nurse in World War II. She goes on to become a physician, but she has this interest in botany. And what was amazing to me is that she was bringing sort of 20th century, 21st century medical knowledge back into the 1700s, and how much she relied on food and plants as actual medicine.
Yes.
Because that's all she had.
Yeah.
So that part, plus the lead guy in the story is very hunky and very attractive. And,
Okay.
There's now a television series based on it too, if you,
That's what I thought.
don't want to read it. The Outlanders.
Outlanders, got it.
Yes, and it takes place in Scotland. So I read it right before I went to Scotland for the first time.
So one of the things you said, one of the phrases you had was food is medicine, right? And that's really, I don't think that there's any practitioner out there that would say, well, that's a dumb idea. Right? I mean, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, right. So that's brilliant. It's perfect. Food is medicine. It's not the magic bullet, but it really is. It can be a huge driver of disease, and it can be a huge driver in recovery. So, and that is no different for fibromyalgia. And honestly, the good news is that an anti-inflammatory diet that really addresses fibromyalgia and the symptoms and also pain is applicable across many chronic diseases, and in fact should be the diet that most people eat. So
so tell us what it is.
So if you have fibromyalgia,
I've got my pen.
Okay.
And by the way, I do need to put a plug in for everybody who's driving, because I know we have a lot of our listeners listen to the podcast while they're driving, and also while they're working out. So props to everyone who's listening to us while they're working out, but I know they can't take notes. So I just want to remind everybody of the absolute obvious thing is that you're allowed to listen to these again.
Yes.
There's no charge. You can go online and you can listen as many times. You can listen first in the car and then you can take notes. So for everybody who's taking notes, this is the part to write down.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, great. So number one, increase intake of nutrient-dense foods. So what is the definition of a nutrient-dense food? It means that for the calorie, you're getting as much bang for your buck as possible, right? So when you're talking, I'm just going to use potato chips as the victim here. When you're talking about potato chips, for the calorie, what are you getting? Not a whole lot, right? So if you apply that kind of formula and that thinking to anything, what is the, most nutritional bang for my buck I can get with calories? Because I know initially you had talked about, controlling calories, and that is important. In the definition of an anti-inflammatory diet, appropriate caloric intake is probably number one, because too much of any good thing is not good, right? You eat enough avocados. Right.
Too much water is not good.
True. If you eat enough avocados and walnuts and cashews, I had a client the other day who shared with me, how many cashews she was eating in a day. And I said, wow, do you recognize that that's about 1,270 calories worth of no idea, right? So, understanding that too much of a good thing is not necessarily good. So, appropriate caloric intake, and then focusing on, again, number one. So I guess that's number two. So appropriate caloric intake. Number two would be, increasing your intake of nutrient-dense foods. Primarily low glycemic index vegetables. This is where you need to be spending most of your time in the kitchen, preparing low glycemic index vegetables. I'm going to define that for you.
Great,
I know
I was going to ask you to.
Yeah, okay. So a low glycemic index food is one that does not spike your blood sugar. It doesn't spike your blood sugar. I mean, any carbohydrate that you consume will raise your blood sugar, but a higher glycemic food is going to spike your blood sugar, like those potato chips, right? Or like white bread is the perfect example. So the glycemic scale is on a zero of 0 to 100. The highest glycemic food would be something like white bread, which would be 100 on this scale. A 0 would be just like pure fiber, where it doesn't have any calories and it's just 100% fiber. It's not going to affect your blood sugar at all.
So celery.
Celery is a very low glycemic index, correct. Celery is very low glycemic index. So, most whole vegetables tend to be moderate to low glycemic, like a sweet potato or beans, really those are moderate glycemic index, and it's really more about the quantity, right? You eat enough beans, you're going to be eating a lot of starch and your blood sugar is going to spike. Should we spend a second talking about how blood sugar spikes? Is that
absolutely
okay? All right, so maybe
absolutely.
I tend to talk really quickly.
You're the guest. You get to talk about what you want to.
Sorry, I don't want to, I just don't want to talk over assuming everybody knows what we're talking about.
No, absolutely.
So, when you consume a carbohydrate, it gets converted to sugar or any kind of pure sugar, right? Your pancreas is going to react by producing insulin. Insulin is a hormone that helps your body use that sugar effectively. So you consume the sugar, your pancreas pumps out insulin, the insulin lowers the glucose level. The problem with consuming a higher glycemic index diet is that your blood sugar is high too much. Like it spikes and it stays there and it's chronically high, or you're on a yo-yo cycle where you're, consuming the bag of chips or a bag of pretzels, your blood sugar spikes, and then your insulin does what it's supposed to, and your blood sugar crashes. And we all know what happens when our blood sugar crashes. It crashes, and then we crave more carbs because our body likes to be in like this normal homeostatic place, right? Just kind of gentle modulating blood sugars. It's not meant to handle these chronically high blood glucose levels. So having said that, thinking about, when you're consuming a carbohydrate, if it is a whole food carbohydrate that is lower glycemic index, it's not going to spike your blood sugar. Therefore, you're not going to have a crash. And chances are that food's going to be super high in fiber, which is really my second point about an anti-inflammatory diet. So low glycemic index vegetables include things like broccoli, cauliflower, kale, right? No surprises here. Celery, cucumbers, just the list, hundreds and hundreds of foods. And when I talk to my clients about following a low glycemic index diet, it is never about restriction. It is about, look at all these beautiful foods that you can eat. And I can help you turn them into beautiful and delicious foods, right? I'm in my office right now, and it's Test Kitchen Tuesday. So my office smells great because we have a chef downstairs converting all of these whole foods, some of which I just mentioned, into delicious, simple foods that you can prepare in your kitchen. So low glycemic index vegetables, low glycemic index fruits like berries are really, really important. An added note about consuming these low glycemic index plant foods is that they're very high in phytochemicals. Phytochemicals are antioxidants. Is probably a word that most people are familiar with. Antioxidants can help with inflammation. Right? So you're going to keep your blood sugar stable, which will help with inflammation for sure. And you will also be consuming many phytochemicals and antioxidants that will help combat inflammation in the body, because oxidants like free radicals cause a lot of damage and they cause inflammation. So you want to make sure that you have high levels of circulating antioxidants in your bodies. And that comes from consuming very colorful fruits, vegetables, on a regular basis. Did I cover it all?
Oh, absolutely. So we talk about, when we talk about colorful fruits and vegetables, we tell people to try to aim for 5 different colors.
Yeah, great.
Because they have, the different colored vegetables and fruits have different nutritional benefits.
Yes.
What are the pro-inflammatory things that people need to eliminate?
This one's super easy, right? Pretty broad category, highly processed foods. Done. Right?
So sugar.
Yes, it could be sugar, and sugar, there are like 1,000 different names for sugar these days. It seems like people are, if you look on the back of a box of cereal, you'll see sugar, but then you'll also see sugar in other forms listed there probably 3 or 4 times. And so, yes, highly processed carbohydrates, which will spike blood sugar. Yes.
Which is basically your biggest argument for cooking and eating at home, as opposed to getting takeout or eating even in a good restaurant, or certainly not a fast food restaurant. because so many of those things have additional additives and additional processing that we're really not aware of.
Exactly. There are other pro-inflammatory, and we can talk about a little bit about that too, but there are other pro-inflammatory compounds in processed foods that you do want to avoid, right? But specifically when referring to the blood sugar spikes and the lack of phytonutrients, like, I don't demonize processed foods generally, but they need to have their place, and it's a very, very small
Very small place.
Very small place in the diet. Really just, so it's pretty easy. You want to start by eating an anti-inflammatory diet, eliminate processed foods, and replace them with whole foods. But again, the second you ask people to do that, you're asking them to address certain barriers like I don't know how to cook these foods, right?
Well, I think the first barrier is that cooking involves some element of planning. Planning involves some element of grocery shopping in advance.
Exactly.
So that's number one.
Yes.
I think when you've been cooking for a long time, and I'm also somebody who loves to cook and loves to
great.
And I'm not a recipe person. I say, okay, what do we have in the refrigerator? Yes. And how can I throw this together in a different way tonight for whatever I'm in the mood with? But it involves having stuff in the refrigerator.
Yep.
And it involves having something that, some kind of skill or a plan or a recipe.
Yes.
So I think that is, the first step. The second step is this issue of time. Mm-hmm. And I've always been somebody, even when I was in residency and I was working 110 plus hours a week, I always cooked because I felt it saved me time. Other people say they don't have time to cook. I feel like I don't have time to drive someplace and then be seated and then order and then wait for my food and then eat and then drive home. And then, of course, depending on where you live, parking can be a nightmare. Yeah, of course. But I also didn't have any money. So, as a resident, I was making $21,000 a year and paying $400 a month in rent and $400 a month in student loans.
Yeah.
So just to kind of put all those numbers in perspective. Sure. So cooking also is very economical if you do it cleverly.
Yeah.
So I know what I used to do when I was in residency is every Sunday, I would either make a whole roaster chicken or a turkey. Most people only make turkey once a year. But when you're somebody who's cooking for the week, turkey is a great thing to make.
Yeah.
Or even just to make it
on meal plans at least once a week. I mean, turkey's on the meal plans. Yeah.
It's easy to freeze. It's easy to cut. You put it in the oven, you're done.
Yeah.
Special.
And there's all different kinds, you can get the turkey breast, you can get a turkey roast, you can get ground turkey. So yeah.
Well, I think my greatest discovery was when I learned about the baking bags, the roasting bags.
Yes.
Because I also don't like to clean.
Okay.
So I think that's another downside for people who don't want to cook. I see people, especially in this area, who have gorgeous, immaculate kitchens. And I do this little experiment. I open the stove. And it looks like the oven has never, ever been used. When I bought my last house, it was about 7 years old when I bought it. The oven had seriously never been used.
Not a good sign. Yeah, it doesn't, it does not have to be complicated. I love that you're focusing on the plan, especially for those who suffer with fibromyalgia. Having a plan written down, it's important. If you're going to the grocery store and you're tired, or you're going to the grocery store and you're hungry, you're just looking for shortcuts. It's natural to want to do that. So having a plan and I should mention that working with a credentialed healthcare provider and helping you craft that plan, like you don't have to do this alone. You really, finding someone in your insurance network to support you. So it doesn't even have to be an out-of-pocket expense.
Right. So talk to us about that. Talk to me first about what is the difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist? Because I think lots of
good time to bring this up before we continue about the anti-inflammatory. It's a really good point. So registered dietitians and nutritionists are different. Anybody can call themselves a nutritionist. If your neighbor has read a book and is inspired to counsel you on food as it affects your fibromyalgia, they, in the state of New Jersey, actually, they are welcome to do that. My profession is not licensed in the state of New Jersey. So
how many states are they licensed in?
Every other state but 2.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
New Jersey and what else?
I don't know.
What is our problem?
It's just it's difficult because it costs money. If you're going to open up a licensing board, it's going to cost you money. You're going to have to maintain it because then people are going to have to pay for licensure and you're going to have to oversee it. But here's the funny thing, like my hairdresser next door, he needs to be licensed, right? Where I get my nails done when I find the time, twice a month. Their staff, they need to have a license, and yet the profession of registered dietitian is not licensed in the state of New Jersey. So that's a conversation for another day. But it's important to make sure that when you engage the services of anybody who calls themselves a nutritionist or wants to counsel you on food as it relates to your condition, you need to make sure that person has a credential. A credential is not taking an online course. A credential is not, I took some adult education classes. That's not it. So registered dietitian has an undergraduate degree in nutrition. So that's kind of like baseline, right? Our academy, which is our governing organization, is now requiring that we have master's degrees as well. So you are now seeing more registered dietitians who also have master's degrees. So we have, master's level skills in a variety of areas. My skill is nutrition education. We do a dietetic internship, unpaid, 1,200 hours in clinical settings. So we have to be in hospitals. We have to be in long-term care facilities. We also work in employee wellness, food service, right? We have to learn food safety. If we're going to have a conversation around food with our clients, we need to make sure that they're doing it safely. So if you are engaging the services of a registered dietitian, you can be comfortable knowing that they have gone through a rigorous process to be there. Not only that, but like doctors, we have to maintain our credential and we have to do continuing education. And we are accountable by a code of ethics by our governing body. So a whole lot goes into becoming a registered dietitian. Highly recommend the profession. If you're thinking of a second career out there, anybody call me. I'll give you the lowdown on that.
So talk to me about insurance reimbursement and how that works.
Yeah. So most people don't realize this. Every time I shout it from the rooftops, every time we give a community presentation, I always mention this. We are credentialed healthcare providers, and your insurance company wants to make sure that that you're healthy. They want to keep you off the medications. They want to keep you out of the hospitals. And one of the best ways to do that is through nutrition and diet. And so nutrition counseling services are traditionally covered, all different extent though. All plans are different. So some of my patients get 4 visits, some get 28, right? You never know. But you should call your insurance company to see what nutrition counseling services you can receive. And so coming in to see a registered dietitian may cost you nothing more than a $10 copay.
I think that's the number one tip that I would give most people as soon as they get off this program or stop driving, is to call their insurance company and find out.
Call your insurance company.
Probably everybody could benefit in some way
of course.
From some nutritional counseling.
And honestly, it's not, for me, it's not just that person. It's like future generations. Mm-hmm. So if I can affect one person's approach to nutrition and following, the anti-inflammatory diet, for example, that we're talking about today, that person's fibromyalgia may be improved, but guess what? The health of their family is going to improve too. Right.
So we talk about, we talk a lot about diseases that are related to better eating or poor eating choices. So classically, we're always harping about diabetes and hypertension and elevated cholesterol. I don't know that most people knew that conditions like arthritis and fibromyalgia have a nutritional component that can improve their health. But certainly the number one condition that is diet related is obesity.
Yes.
And we now are in a situation where more than a third of all adults over 30 are obese or significantly overweight. And our children, we're seeing that. I just was at a conference about the rising maternal mortality rates in the United States. The United States is the only developed nation where our maternal mortality is going up, which is just so unacceptable. And there are a lot of explanations for that, and there are a lot of excuses for that.
Yeah, sure.
But the number one factor that this is attributable to is obesity in pregnancy, causing all kinds of problems. Like, yes, women have heart attacks in pregnancy and in labor and delivery. So, these are all things that I think are so important, but especially, what we're teaching our children. And not just our little children. you know, our young adult children who are now have left the nest and who are learning to make their own way and who are making decisions about eating out or cooking or, you know, the Starbucks habit,
Yeah.
you know, which is, you know, a fortune also, you know, in
Yeah.
terms of our young adults too. I think there's a great opportunity for you to talk about finances and cooking and, you know, the relationship between food and finances.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not now because we don't have time for it, but
Yeah,
we're going to have you come
Well,
back.
I do want to get back to the obesity and overweight because it's something that cannot be ignored, and definitely affects fibromyalgia. You know, fats, and I'm telling you this, you already know this, but for your audience, your fat cells are not static. They are dynamic cells, and they produce inflammatory hormones, and that can, you know, exacerbate any condition, fibromyalgia and otherwise. So you know, that's something that needs to be discussed with your healthcare practitioner. If you know, if you fall into a class of being overweight or obese, it's not about diet. You know, that approach has been proven over and over and over again to just not be effective. It's not about counting calories and counting points and, you know, putting people on restrictive diets so that they can lose the weight short term just to regain it back, which is worse, right? So, you know, kind of attacking it head on, saying, okay, you know, you're out of normal weight range. So let's talk about some habits so that your body can kind of take care of itself, right? So feeding your body the foods that it needs without, and just having it kind of be spontaneous weight loss is kind of how I explain it to my clients. I don't want you thinking about the weight. I don't want you thinking about the calories. What I want you thinking about is your behaviors, and you know, really attacking these nutrition related behaviors is the key to addressing obesity and overweight. It's not the next new diet. It's not the next new pill. They don't work. And it's really exhausting, you know, explaining that over and over again, because, you know, people are always looking for that magic pill, and it won't exist. It really won't. I think that people just need to say, okay, I need to change my behaviors, and I'm going to, you know, put together a tribe of people to help me do that. And then, you know, once you're in kind of the sustainable mode, you know, you're off, you know, your body takes care of itself. You know, the weight loss happens, the inflammation resolves, you know, the fibromyalgia pain gets better, all without thinking about dieting, you know. So I just wanted to bring that up because every time obesity
That's a great point.
comes up, people are like, oh, diet. And no, it's not about dieting. It's not about restriction. It's about focusing on behaviors and giving people the knowledge and the skills and the tools that they need to, you know, change their behaviors and change their environment.
Yeah. And one of the things, we've had so many guests approach this from different perspectives. So we had the sleep doctor, Dr. Michael Bruce.
Oh, he was great.
How influential sleep is and what a big factor just getting adequate sleep is as a healthy behavior. And then we've had Joetta Clark-Diggs, who's a 4-time Olympian, talk about the role of exercise. And you can't out-train a bad diet.
No.
So even if you're an Olympic athlete, even if you're running 4 hours a day, you know, even Olympic athletes have to really focus on what they're eating. You know, we used to say, when I used to be a competitive swimmer, and we used to say GIGO, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah. Well, you know what? When you were a competitive swimmer, you had a whole lot of metabolic flexibility, right?
I had a lot of metabolic.
You were young, you were burning calories, life was good. But, you know, as you get older and, you know, fibromyalgia, you know, disproportionately affects women, and affects us as we age, right? You know, you could receive the diagnosis early on, but, you know, typically it happens, you know, late 20s, early 30s, moving into our 40s. And so, you know, it's important to note that.
Absolutely. I was 34 when I developed symptoms, but I was also postpartum from my second child. And I was not diagnosed for a long time afterwards. And it was interesting because I started having symptoms when I was about 5 months postpartum. And just about every doctor who I saw wanted to tell me I had postpartum depression.
Oh, okay.
And I would say variously things like, well, why does the right side of my body have depression, but the left side of my body is fine? Or I would say, I don't do depression. I do anger and hostility. And right now I'm getting really angry. But for me, you know, you said you finally found a doctor at Robert Wood Johnson. I finally found a woman rheumatologist who was pregnant with her third child at the time.
Right.
And it never occurred to her that any of my symptoms had anything to do with pregnancy. And we just started from the beginning. And it turns out my symptoms were all from having had Lyme disease.
Yeah, which, it's all about exploring what the trigger is, because fibromyalgia almost always, and that's kind of like the functional medicine approach, right? There's a root cause to these things or triggers. And very often it's an event, either a traumatic event or a physiological event.
Often there isn't.
Often,
but there's nothing that we can find.
True.
It doesn't mean it's not there.
That's right.
The term we use is idiopathic.
Yes.
Which we say is I'm an idiot, and that means I can't figure out what the pathology.
The doctor's an idiot for not figuring it out.
Well, that's me. I'm the doctor in this case. So yeah, we can't always find out, or I sometimes say my crystal ball is broken. But just because we don't know the cause doesn't mean we can't figure out some solutions.
Resolution.
Now, a solution does not mean a cure.
Of course not.
So there's no magic bullet.
Right.
I know my son was sick with a related disease for many years. He had chronic fatigue syndrome.
Yeah.
And I really felt like I would just kill somebody if one more person came up to me and said, have you tried vitamin C?
Right.
And I said, if I ever write a book about this, I'm going to write a book called CFS is not a vitamin C deficiency.
He'd have scurvy.
Yeah, right. Most people want to give you some pill, right? Vitamin C is a pill. Okay. Or they want to come up with some supplement. Right. And what I always tell people is it's not a Chinese menu. You don't pick one from column B or one from column A or two from column B.
Right.
You take the best of everything. I love how you talk about what's in your toolkit.
Yes.
So we just have a few minutes left. So tell me, what are the tools in the Living Plate toolkit that people can, and how can people find them?
Okay, so first, livingplate.org, www.livingplate.org is a place where you can go. It's kind of home base for information. You can also contact me. So if you have any questions after hearing this,
I'm calling you.
Yeah. Okay.
I am absolutely. We just
livingplate.org. Okay. No, I'm here. I'm back. So the tools really, number one is find a registered dietitian to work with. I can help you do that. We have registered dietitians that we work with nationally, so it doesn't matter where you are, we'll find you somebody to work with. That's number one. So that's part of like building your tribe, right? Find a medical.
I love that expression.
Yeah, and it's being used a lot, and I love it, especially in the area of female medicine, female healthcare. So you really build a network of people, but the registered dietitian needs to be part of that conversation. And secondly, having a plan, like the toolkit. Our meal plans get transformational for our patients and the registered dietitian. It allows us to have conversation around food. So there's a free trial of the meal plans. They're super low cost, anywhere from $9 to $19 a month to get this nutrition prescription delivered to you every Friday. And, you can work with your registered dietitian to have a conversation around food. And then, also we have programming that is available virtually. So we're actually just completing, let me show you. We partner with experts in fields outside our own. So can you read this?
Wow.
What is that?
Fibromyalgia Freedom.
Fibromyalgia Freedom. So Kathleen Stanifer is a registered dietitian and expert in nutrition as it relates to fibromyalgia. We are currently developing an educational program that we're going to be pushing out through Facebook. There's going to be a webinar series, so you can look forward to that. But again, in the meantime, really, number one, connect with a registered dietitian who can work with you and have a conversation around food on the meal plans to cover, all aspects of this anti-inflammatory diet, right? High in phytonutrients, high in fiber, high in low glycemic index vegetables, really, really key. And help you transform your environment too, because I know we talked about that too. So
and sleep and cleaning the pantry.
And so, nutrition plays a large part of that. I love that about the sleep doctor. He talked about, nutrition plays a big part in your ability to be able to go to sleep and have restorative sleep. Mm-hmm. So consuming an anti-inflammatory diet will help that.
Well, one of the things that he said that I adopted, which was an easy thing to add to my routine, was when you're having that crash at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon and you feel like you need sugar or caffeine, go outside and get some sunlight.
Absolutely. Vitamin D.
Since our weather is better, I've been doing a great job at that. The thing
Yeah.
I now have a problem with is how do I get back inside after I go out? Because then I just want to stay out. I don't want to come back in.
Getting the vitamin D and having your circadian rhythms really,
Yeah.
humming is super important. And again, we could do a whole, maybe our next podcast will be nutrition and sleep, because there's really a lot of research.
So much more to talk about.
Intermittent fasting and a lot of different things that you can employ, practices you can employ that can help with sleep.
Well, this has been so great talking to you. Before I let you go, though, I have to ask you the same question I ask all my guests, because we love the answers. Aside from this experience being in the ladies' room,
yes,
what was the most interesting, different, unique, or memorable experience you ever had in the ladies' room?
Oh, I've had so many, actually. I have 4 children, so I've spent a lot of time in the ladies' room with both my daughters and my sons. And actually, so why don't we go there? So I do have so many experiences. I would say that, the conversations that I have with my children, like while they're taking care of business, it's really just us in this space, and it's just a great time to talk. And it wasn't that long ago that my daughter, she's now 10, she's an athlete and is a gymnast, right? So she's got a very muscular gymnastic body. And she asked me, "Mommy, do you think I need to get skinny?" And it broke my heart to even hear her say that. But you're a mom, you got to think on your feet, right? Like, no, she doesn't need to get skinny. But what am I going to say to her that would make sense? And I said, honey, why would you ask me that question? And she said, well, I know my friends were talking about it. And this is in 3rd grade. My friends are talking about it. And, I look a little bit different than my friends, which she does. And so I asked her what she thought about it. And she's like, well, I'm strong and I have muscles. And I'm like, yes, honey, that's exactly right. Your body is different than everybody else's. So, the conversation that I had with my daughter really just illuminated the importance for me as a practitioner, like this whole diet culture and our diet obsession and body, dysmorphic body image. It's hard. And I really want to, work with clients and patients on an anti-diet level, right? Like having conversation. Food is joy. Food should be celebrated. It should not be about, can I eat less to be skinnier? That's not what it should be about. It should be about health.
There are certain environments, though, that are worse for our children than others. And gymnastics is a sport that classically building body dysmorphia. My daughter had a very similar experience when she was a gymnast about that same age, where her coach said to me in front of her that she needed to get skinnier. And she did not need to get skinnier. She was perfectly proportioned and perfectly fit. She was a lot taller than the other girls and a lot bigger than the other girls. And I said, no, that's not what we need to do. What we need to do is find a healthier sport.
Right.
And she switched from gymnastics to soccer and became a phenomenal soccer player.
There you go.
But I think you can even show your daughter pictures of Olympic gymnasts.
Honestly,
the range of bodies is all over the place now.
It is. And I think that I don't want to demonize that sport because it's
I do. No, I do.
Yeah.
Because, and that's not to demonize everyone in that sport.
Exactly.
But, obviously we've heard a tremendous amount about sexual abuse of gymnasts at the national and highest, most elite levels. We've heard about all kinds of other harassment. The good news is there are organizations that are making positive steps in that arena.
And the athletes that are the role models now, right?
Right. Coaches are constantly fat shaming and body shaming athletes. And these are athletes who are strong and fit and smart and capable, and they don't need to be diminished because their muscles are not as sleek as somebody else's.
Exactly. So I encourage all of the listeners to your podcast to really, focus on health and healthy living and healthy, food, and really avoid diet talk, especially women around their daughters. Like, I might have issues with my body, but I'm not going to talk about it in front of my daughters, right? It should be all about, health and being comfortable in your own body. And as long as you're maintaining a healthy environment and serving your family healthy foods, it all works out in the end.
And that's a great note to end on. Thank you so much for coming. I hope we can have you back again. And I will be at your office within the
Yay.
next week. That's step one for me.
I look forward to meeting you in person. Thank you,
All right,
Dr.
take care.
Okay,
Bye-bye. Thanks again.
bye-bye.
That's all we have time for today. But let's keep the conversation going on Twitter or Facebook at Dr. Donica. And please join us next week for another episode of In the Ladies' Room with Dr. Donica. Real conversations with real women about really intimate topics.